All right, so writing a literature review is probably one of the harder types of assessment to get your head around before you've done one before. But once you learn how to do it, it is actually quite easy. It's just learning how to do it. That's the issue. So we're going to go through a couple of steps today in looking at how to find the information that you need to put into that literature review. Once you've got the information, then how do you write it all out, and especially to fit within a word limit, a 1500 word limit. The question most people ask is, what actually is a literature review? It's hard to know if you've never done one before. So you can either go and look up literature reviews that have already been done by people that are online, have a read through how they put their information together and what they're actually reviewing and how they're reviewing it. So basically, what you need to do is find some literature. So you've got a topic that you have chosen or your teacher has chosen for you. And what you're going to do is review that literature. So you're going to read it. So let's just say it's on some kind of health impact. You know, if we're looking at a biology and disease type topic, you want to find literature that is specific to the topic that you have chosen, or your teacher, for you to do. So it's a critical analysis of that literature, literature that's been published already, and it's based on a particular topic. So that's the main theme there. You want to try and find literature that are all kind of on the same topic to review. And the idea behind it is basically so you can understand the literature you're reading on that topic. And to do that, you need to analyse the information in the literature that you are reviewing on your chosen topic. And then once you've done that and you've collated your information on the same topic from different pieces of literature, you want to synthesize that information into one review. The first question you should try and get your head around is how you should actually format your literature review. So it's going to vary depending on what level you are at in your education. So if we're just looking at a high school level, so year 11 and 12, standard essay format is actually fine, especially if it's your first literature review. So the things you can include are just a nice introduction to your topic. We'll go over a little bit later what some information could go in your introduction. Then you need the body of your assignment. So that's all the, main information. And then a conclusion. So you want to conclude based on all the literature you found. What is the overall conclusion? And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more in upcoming slides. So the next question I get asked a lot is, what should I include in my literature review? Okay, what actually do I include in it? So you want to look for all the information, all literature that's already been written and published on the topic that you've chosen to review. So if it's an aspect of health or disease or environmental health impacts on health, then that's the kind of literature you want to look for. Then you want to put down all the key concepts of the literature you're reviewing. So you can jot that down maybe on a piece of paper, go through and for each of your pieces of literature that you're looking at, jot down any of the key concepts that you see. And when you do that, the idea is to look for any patterns or trends that you find are similar within that literature, or any relationships that you find between the different literature that you've read. Same with differences as well. So is there any patterns or trends that you see that will help you understand the different types of literature and then to collate that literature? Okay, so now you've got all the strengths, you've got all the different types of key concepts. You want to look at the strengths and weaknesses. That's really, really important when you are putting together a review. So you go through each of the articles and see if there are any strengths that are common throughout each of those papers, and you want to jot those down somewhere so you've got that ready to go when you put your writing together. Same thing with the weaknesses. So what are common weaknesses that you can identify that are common throughout the papers, or again different throughout the papers? And then you also want to compare each article. So what are the gaps that are mentioned in the research? So what sort of things did the researchers sort of get to as far as their studies went? But they found, you found, sorry, a gap in that literature where further study could be done. So you want to note down what those gaps are in each of the different pieces of literature you're reviewing. And also, were those gaps similar? So did they find that scientists were researchers stuck on a specific thing, and that seems to be a common thread, or were they all completely different gaps in the literature? So just, again, note all of that down before you even start writing. Another piece of information that will help you when you, before you actually write your literature review, is to go through all the papers. So if you've got 10 different peer-reviewed papers you're looking at, write down if there's any conflict between the literature. So did any of the literature conflict each other? So they've presented their evidence. Is there a common sort of agreement throughout each of these papers, or do they conflict each other? And you might want to write down as well a little bit of background information on the paper's overall content, so that way you get your head around each of the papers that you are reviewing. So hopefully now you have an idea of what a literature review is. So the next question that is commonly asked is, well, how do I start writing one? I've got all these bits of information and now I don't know what to write. So first, prepare and gather your information. That's what you should have done based on the last slides that went up. They're the kinds of concepts you want to be looking for. So prepare and gather your information and have that ready. What's the purpose of your review? So what have you been asked to research? You want to go back to your assignment question for the literature review, and it gives you an overall kind of topic. The scene is set for what it is you need to be looking for, and that's going to be the purpose of your review. Okay? And then what are you trying to find out from the literature that you're reading? So first you need to get your purpose of the review down. So just write it out if you need to on a blank piece of paper, type it out. What is the purpose of this review? Go back, look at what you've been asked to do. That's the purpose. And then once you have the purpose written down, go back and see what you're trying to find out from the literature. Are you trying to find out, different ways that diseases or contaminants are affecting people's health, or are you looking for the impact on health first and then what's causing that? So you need to have a look through the research first before you decide sort of which way you want to present that. But once you have your purpose down, it'll make it a lot easier for you to figure out what you're trying to find out from the literature. Some other things that you can write down as you are reviewing each of your literature. Again, this is all done before you even start writing. You should note down what's already been written on the topic you're reviewing. So that was discussed earlier. Look for information from literature and resources that are relevant, current, and peer-reviewed. Okay, so make sure they're not going off on a tangent on some other topic that is not relevant whatsoever to the purpose of your investigation. Make sure the literature is current. Now you might find some that has been done, years ago, and researchers have built on that past paper, but make sure you found the lead on, papers that are much more current. Keep note of each reference as you go. So what was the date of the publication? Who are the authors? Are there any page numbers you want to flick back and refer to in your review? Publisher, etc. Another way to write that you should be writing a literature review is not going through and just looking for facts. You want to look at the arguments that are presented. Okay, so in this literature, what arguments have been made by the researchers? Are they presenting, positive arguments, negative arguments? Are they arguing, for something, against something? So you want to identify the arguments that are being made by the authors, note those down, and again, look for current trends and patterns and relationships between each of the arguments made in each of the papers you are looking at. Now, of course, everybody studies differently and everybody researches differently. This is one of the ways that I kind of put together my own literature reviews back in the times that I was doing these things for my master's. So one thing that I did that I found quite helpful, and you are more than welcome to copy this table or do one similar. So you're required to say to do 10 peer-reviewed sources, and that number is going to vary depending on your assignment. So just say we'll go with 10. You can write those articles down the side. Okay, you can put the title of the article there if you want to. Then you can just write down for each of the 10 articles, what's the purpose? That can just be some nice dot points there just to collate the information. In the next column, you can put down the date of the publication, who the authors were, and that kind of thing. And then you've got that all there. Go through and note down the argument. What's the key argument from each of those 10 peer-reviewed sources? And you can just jot those down that column there. Do it again for the key concept. So each time you go through those 10 articles, write down a key concept or key concepts from each of those 10 articles, and that way they're all there. You can compare it a lot easier. Next, go back through the article again, the articles, look for the patterns and trends. Okay, what did you see that was similar? What did you see that was different? And the last two columns, do the same things for any strengths that were mentioned in the literature and any weaknesses you've got in the literature. Now, this is just for your own research, not to actually put into your literature review, but this is an easy way to have everything sort of set out clearly, so you can review the data, or you can review the article, you can review the information that's been put in there. But you can put your own table together. This is just one of the ways that I did it in the past, so hopefully it might help some of you to gather your information. Once you've got all your information and you've got all the sort of key concepts that you want to include, we can start with the introduction. Now, these are quite basic little dot points here because you're all going to have different things that you're talking about. So in the introduction, you want to lay out why this topic is important. And if you're thinking, what do you mean this topic? Go back to the question in your assignment sheet. That's the topic. Why is it important that we know, or the public, whoever knows about environmental impacts on, whatever it is the topic is, on human health? Okay, that needs to go into your introduction. Then you want to outline what will be discussed throughout the paper and the overall theme of the literature. So if there's something that is in common, you might look at the overall theme is there a common thread that's being mentioned that affects human health or not? So that sort of stuff can all go into your introduction. And the next section is the body of your assignment. So all the paragraphs and information that make up the bulk and the body of your assignment. In this section, you should have some background information again, so expand on that. You can write about the methods that were used in the studies conducted, look at the viewpoints of the authors, and what conclusions are being drawn. So that's the type of information you need to pop into that section. And lastly, the conclusion. So again, this is a little table that I drew up myself that hopefully will make it easier for you if you need help to organise your information. So you want to look at, this is in the conclusion, any agreements or disagreements within the literature, those gaps or areas for further research, and the overall perspective of the topic. So again, you can have if it's 10 peer-reviewed articles, you can have those listed down in the first column. Note down any agreements or disagreements or strengths and weaknesses. Either way, I know that's in the last table, but you can do similar here. They might not have any agreements or disagreements, so that's fine. You can just leave. They should all find or have a gap in their literature. You need to go and find what that gap is so they can do further research on it, and the overall perspective of those papers that you reviewed. So again, this particular slide is not my own work. If you go back a slide and look at that website, then you can click on that and it's really clearly set out. This is just a little summary of that so you can see how to write, I guess, the introduction. So what are the themes that you're identifying? What's the specific focus? Again, this is just for an introduction. If you go and click on the website, the web address, it will go into that in more detail, but hopefully this will help you sort of get on the right track. And hopefully this is how you feel after you've handed that in. So this is really good practice for those of you who want to go on to further education, postgraduate or undergraduate and postgraduate education, where you will need to most likely write a literature review. Use this one as, I guess, your practice for learning how to write a literature review. So when you do go on to further study, you already know how to do that. So good luck, and I look forward to reading your literature reviews.